Why are you so attracted to people which are no good for you? I'm not making fun of you. I've had to confront these issues inside of myself multiple times over the years. It's time for us to sit down with our shadow and explore our shadow magnetisms. Put more simply, we're going to list out all of the negative traits from previous partners and potential romantic interest that we keep seeming to attract. This exercise is going to give you a very strong and honestly quite confronting reflection of your own shadow compulsions and shadow tendencies. It's the dark side of your anima or animus image. And it's a really useful exercise, which I often do with clients who are coming out of abusive relationships or otherwise, and it's a variety of abusive relationships, right? From the man who's with a verbally abusive female partner who always degrades him and talks down to him or otherwise disrespects him, the woman who has a similar situation, or maybe there's physical violence involved, and of course in horrific and disgusting circumstances when the even within a relationship, we need to pause and think, why is this still happening? Why another person like this? Because I don't want you to continue that pattern. A variety of different responses for the different people who will be taking this course. Some people, the worst it gets for them is attracting a partner who talks down to them or is maybe emotionally distant. And at the other extreme, there will be a handful of people who've been in multiple relationships where there's been in the relationship. And they are at the point of, well, what the do I do now? How do I keep attracting these disgusting individuals? We're trying to speak across the spectrum. It's a heavy video, but I think it is a very powerful and genuinely quite sobering, but also quite authentically life-nourishing exercise if you're willing to go into the space with me. I know you're a keenly perceptive person, so you probably noticed that several of the words in that clip were censored and cut out of the audio because this is a guided exercise from Module 7 of my shadow work library, which is called the Relationship Shadow. It's not actually called the Relationship Shadow. I just can't say the word S on YouTube too many times, so I say the word intimacy instead. But this is the module from my course where we're looking at romantic projection, masculine healing, feminine healing. We've even got taboo territory lectures in, I hope I can say this on YouTube, kink and conscious relationships and shadow dynamics. It's a very intense but very fascinating module, and I don't know if I'm running a risk with my YouTube account of even sharing this. I'm hopefully blocking out some of the words, but nonetheless, the lengths that I take to try and show you what's happening on the inside of the shadow work library, it's some of the best work I've ever produced. It is a wonderful course full of guided, self-paced curriculum, and this is just one of the over 20 guided exercises from the shadow work library. I hope you enjoy. Make sure to get out your journal. And once again, I apologize about the censorship. I wish I didn't have to do this, which is why I made a course where I don't need to censor myself at all and no topics are off limit. In fact, I'm even answering private Q&A questions every single week over in the course. So you can basically do what you're doing on YouTube with me right now, but with nothing being held back. It's very fun. In the meantime, enjoy this shadow magnetism exercise and hopefully, fingers crossed, you're going to drop your toxic relationship addiction and move into healthier relationships. Grab your journal, enjoy. I've done this with a variety of clients. Let's go into it. You're going to need your journal, you're going to need a pen, and my ideal recommendation for you before going into this exercise, well, it is part of the exercise, list your previous relationships. So, previous significant relationships, long-term relationships, short-term flings, one-night situations. You don't need to write down every single sexual partner you've had. For some people, this will be a very short list. For other people, it will be a very long list. It's the ones that have emotional significance today for you. For example, let's say, for example, you went into your first serious relationship with your high school boyfriend or girlfriend at age 15, 16. It was a more or less normal teenage relationship, and actually it's been many years since you've thought about them. There's not really any emotional charge. It's probably not the one that you focus on. If your current relationship or your previous relationship or maybe the person that you're limerently fantasizing about and you have that romantic projection all wrapped up in is really where the energy charge is, that's where you should focus. Most people will have 2 to 5 individuals that they can write down and go, this person's name, this person's name, this person's name, this person's name. And then what I want you to do is to do a very quick shadow trait exercise, and I want to give a warning ahead of time. This is a strange bit of space to go into because, of course, nobody is all bad. I don't want to be accidentally reinforcing a narrative that your toxic ex was truly the worst piece of shit imaginable. You were with them for a reason, and it wasn't because they were just this toxic, dreadful person. Clearly they had some redeemable traits. So if you really want to take this into like a deep space, you can write down every relationship. You can do positive traits, negative traits of the individual or of the relationship. And then we're going to look at the negative, shadowy aspects, the more conventional, evil shadow aspects in detail. But if you want a peace of mind about, okay, let's put all the pieces together, good things, bad things, I'm not going to disgrace my own ability to make relationship judgments by believing that I made a series of dreadful choices and I'm fundamentally flawed in terms of seeing red flags. I don't want you to anchor that consciousness too strongly because it won't set you up for a feeling of empowerment that you can make good choices about future relationships or improve your current relationship. Bit of an aside, but I needed to mention it. I can't go deeper into this exercise without just being wary of where that consciousness can go into. I don't want you to be accidentally dropped into a victim mindset. Let's get into the exercise in more detail. You've got your partners, you've got their negative traits. You'll notice the patterns. Just take a highlighter, take a pen, see where it comes up. For most, I'll gender stereotypes, just as this is the general dysfunctions I see with clients. For most men, the negative patterns that they see with women will be emotionally turbulent or crazy girls. There'll be substance issues. There'll be issues around their girlfriend flirting with their friends or flirting with people, or even promiscuity or cheating on them. There'll be patterns around nagging behaviors or otherwise being immature in their communication in a way where it always seems like there's an argument. It always seems like there's these gaps between communication. That's a very common one. It's a very subtle one. It's nowhere near as obvious as infidelity, but also most men can relate to that feeling of, I don't know why I was with her so long. She didn't know how to talk. She didn't know how to communicate. It was always tantrums and explosions, or suddenly the cold shoulder, emotionally distant, these kinds of patterns. They tend to be the main ones for men. There's a variety more. Of course, you have your own relationships, so you can list those there. For women, typical patterns in terms of the unhelpful and unfortunately damaging men that they've been dating: controlling, abusive. It's difficult because there's many layers to this conversation, and I'm almost stopping myself in real time because I don't want to seed ideas in your mind. When I'm doing this with clients, I ask them to do the exercise after the session in their own time, and I just provide the questions of positive, negative traits, and then looking at the negative traits, and then I ask the question, once you've got those traits, I'm actually going to discard the listing of all the negative masculine traits. You know what they are. You know what it's like to have been in the abusive or assaultive or otherwise dysfunctional relationship that you're in, because you've got that list of that's what they were like, and they were always like this, and they always ignored me, or they were always way too much, or you can see the patterns. That depends on your particular thing. The important point for this exercise is, why do you keep choosing that kind of person? And unless you ask the question, the real shadow flanking around perspective of, what was the hidden benefit of me choosing this kind of person? What did I secretly enjoy about being with this kind of person? You're not going to get anywhere near the foundation of your shadow compulsions. The man who chooses the emotionally immature, promiscuous, flirting with all his friends and having tantrums if there's any disagreement kind of woman, typically, and I can relate to this from my relationships in my teenage years, I can relate, and men can usually relate to the idea of, oh, it's because it's exciting, or because she brings some spontaneity into their life, because they've got the structure, they've got rigidity, and they mistake emotional intensity for emotional intelligence. They think that because she feels so deeply and she's everywhere, she's like everywhere all the time, and she doesn't have emotional self-control or the capacity to regulate her moods while still feeling, which of course is the more mature emotional intelligence of, you don't repress things, but you know how to contain in a way where you don't spill out and hurt other people. Until men mature in their own emotional self-capacity, they don't have the ability to really distinguish between healthy feminine emotionality and unhealthy feminine emotionality. But the hidden reason why they wanted that in the first place, across the board for most men, is it's exciting. And they find a sense of, oh, it's exciting, it's a game I get to play, it's drama that I get to participate in. The shadow reason that I stayed in that abusive dynamic when my girlfriend was berating me is, well, I didn't know what to expect, and actually I feel like I'm kind of boring, and I like having that unexpected flair. I like the crazy hot girl. That's the stereotype, that's the cliche, right? We'll take it to the situations with female clients. This is a pattern that I've seen over and over again in terms of previous relationships where there's been verbal violence or physical violence or sexual violence. Again, a big spectrum. I'm not trying to shame or fault. Hopefully you can see that we're trying to have a mature conversation here. When women have been honest with me in private spaces and they've said, well, why do I keep choosing these controlling, abusive men? Why? What is it that I actually like about this? The usual answers relate to, oh, I don't have to make choices anymore. If he's making all of my choices, in terms of literally choosing like how I do and don't use my body, and this is real dark, shadowy questions. I'm speaking out some of the things that I've seen. You don't need to accept this truth. Certain people have come to me and certain patterns emerged over time. When women address that desire to go towards controlling men, there's something about, oh, I don't have to make choices. And there's a strange liberation of not needing to take responsibility because he takes responsibility for everything. And even though it's a toxic controlling dynamic, that somehow has a payoff behind the scenes. There's something about, well, you know, this idea of, oh, he keeps me safe, even though he hurts me, he keeps me safe, because there's an indication there towards the healed future potential. I'm not saying stay in these abusive relationships, but that controlling, abusive, manipulative dynamic at the lowest end of consciousness, if a man heals his own patterns to a higher level, that becomes wonderfully devoted, protective energy. Devoted, protected masculinity. My energy's changed even talking about that, rather than the disgusting, immature and destructive behaviors that men can fall into, in the same way that the emotional immaturity of being swept around by moods and being this hurricane woman who berates her male partner or otherwise ends up in these addictive kind of cycles, that emotional intensity can become an emotional depth that has so much presence and so much beauty inside of it, but it's about healing along the spectrum. If you look at your journal page and you've gone through this, of course, pause if you haven't made those connections just yet. If you see, my shadow magnetism was pointing me towards a desire to have everything taken care of for me, or to have some more excitement and emotionality in my life, the two invitations for you actually then moving beyond these patterns, this is where it becomes practical. So the exercise gets us to the point of awareness, and now we get to make actions or boundaries or decisions or intentions for future relationships or improving our current relationship. There's two things that you can do. Number one thing that you can do is recognize that even the most shadowy, heavy, disgusting, destructive, and dysfunctional character traits and behaviors do have a healed opposite. There's a potential timeline on any given trait where it can become life affirmative. It takes many stages of development. It takes someone who's willing to go on that healing journey, but controlling, manipulative, abusive men, I'd like to imagine, if they're willing to put in the work and they go through all the processes, kinds that have happened in this course, they can go from manipulative and abusive towards the middle zone, towards eventually being quite devoted and protective. That ability to be able to be a strong man who's showing up for the people he cares about, in the same way that a woman who has addiction issues because you get what I'm saying. There's a healed timeline, and if you start to pay attention to the fact that you've had 10 relationships or 10 encounters with 10 different people, and they all have a particular trait. Let's go with controlling man example. They all have that trait. Triggering sentence is about to come in. Don't expect that you're going to stop being attracted to that trait. That's not setting you up for success. There's something deep inside your psyche that wants to be controlled. However, the version of that story that you choose to participate in can be very low consciousness or very consensual, very communicative, and very collaborative. And it's not about control, it's about ownership. There's a feeling of I want to be owned by someone in sense of I want him to truly take my needs into consideration and own them as if I was a part of him, and to treat me as if I was a part of him, and that feeling of being engulfed in love. That's healthy, positive, mature, masculine ownership. And of course, protectiveness comes in there as well. It's likely that your romantic blueprint, if you even look back on the exercise of the ideal partner, that same theme will be woven throughout of, I actually do want that. I do find a man who's like that to be the most inspiring and most attractive, in the same way that a man, if we're going with the example of the hurricane woman who has emotional moods and she's all over the place, don't expect that don't expect that you'll lose attraction for that kind of woman, but the difference is how that expresses. The healed version of that pattern isn't to go for yet another woman who's hooked on substances or otherwise flaky in her communication and just generally disrespectful towards you, but it's to find the signs of more mature, feminine emotional presence in the way that she looks at you, the way that she turns off her phone, the way that she stays with you, holds your hand and listens to you, and the way that she can be playful, the way that she engages with you outside of your rational kind of structure, doing work, getting things done, and she brings you into a different space. And that different space is more of a loving, playful, connected space, or maybe in a sexual sense, it's more of an authentic, exploratory, playful sexuality that has elements of whatever you two want to do together, but it feels very safe. It feels fundamentally safe, even while being expansive and exciting. It's not this feeling of, ooh, this is expansive and exciting, and I'm also terrified at the same time, and this is kind of unstable, and I'm kind of f***ing up my life. Not that energy, more of a, wow, I'm fully present with her. We just went on this incredible adventure. We just, ran off into the forest, and that kind of feeling. The healed version, number one invitation for the shadow magnetism exercise is, if you know that you have a pattern, a certain shadow magnetism, don't expect that it's going to dissipate. Expect that you'll have that for the rest of your life. Some people won't. Disclaimer aside, sometimes with an exercise like this, you'll go, you know what, actually I'm sick of anything looking like controlling and protectivity. I'm sick of anything like this emotional hurricane. I want to completely move out. However, if you've got 10 years or 20 years or however many years of going for the same kinds of people or being in a certain type of relationship, it's probably there. It's probably there for one reason or another, and we haven't got time to discuss why it would be there, why that would be an imprint from a mother wound, a father wound, or some other psychological wiring in one way or another. Assume it's going to be there. The number two invitation, in addition to the outer world and actual partnerships, is of course the expected, well, if you're always looking for men who have certain types of traits, or women who have certain types of traits, why don't you just start developing more of those traits inside yourself? Why don't you just become the kind of person that you want to date? And this is actually, of course, the moment where you look at your ideal partner list from the previous exercise, and you go, I could actually be much more into my fitness, or much more into my, of course, you're not going to grow as a man, and you're not going to develop as a woman, you're not going to develop everything biologically of the opposite trait. Like the superficial stuff, maybe not so much, but the deeper character traits on that exercise, the second stage, where we're looking at the internal character world of loyalty or humor or spontaneity or hard work ethic, devotion, spiritual awareness, whatever it might be, you can start developing those traits without needing a partner. Yes, your partner will be able to meet some of your needs. We're going to be exploring this in a lesson further on about healthy conscious relating and meeting each other's needs, but there is something to be said for also developing your own unexpressed shadow qualities. I likewise have learned how to be more spontaneous, more free-flowing, more playful in a way that I wasn't naturally like that when I was a teenage man, teenage boy, teenage man, whatever you want to call it. And many women learn how to have the variety of more masculine traits as they go further. You get what I'm saying. Accept the shadow magnetisms and try and find the highest possible octave of healthy relating to the literal men and women in your life, and also internalize in the best possible sense and take ownership of the fact that something's missing in your life in one way or another, and there's a certain energetic expression that you want more of. That's the exercise. I hope it's been powerful. It's been a variety of directions, but you've got your page. If you need more time, see where the journaling goes, and I will see you on the next lesson. Unfortunately, we're not in the Shadowwork library, so the next lesson isn't available, but I do have an alternative lesson for you. It's a lesson in unboxing, because over here you can see me unbox the entire course by clicking on that playlist link. We're going to do a detailed breakdown, and unlike this box, which actually contains a variety of delicious Indian spices, this contains over 110 delicious videos, and I mean, you can go either direction, but you can't click on this. I can sniff it, but you need to click over here, and I'll see you over there for the full Shadowwork library breakdown.